Hello everyone. These JRPGs are the ones that really worth your time on Switch and Switch 2, mixing old classics, remasters, and newer releases people sometimes overlook. Some you already know, some might surprise you. Let's get into it. Dark Souls Remastered. Not a JRPG in the traditional sense, but From Software's DNA runs through half the genre now, so it earns its spot on this list. You're the Ashen One, dragged out of a grave to link the fire or let it fade, wandering through Lordran's connected, looping world design that still holds up as one of the smartest level layouts ever built. Combat is stamina-based, deliberate, and punishing if you get greedy with your openings. Every enemy teaches you something before it kills you the first few times you meet it. On Switch, it runs a bit soft compared to other platforms. Frame rate dips in busier areas, but portable Dark Souls is still portable Dark Souls. If you've never played it, this is a fine way to see why it shaped a decade of design. Just don't expect hand-holding, there isn't any, and that's the entire point of the game. Final Fantasy XII, the Zodiac Age. This one gets slept on a lot compared to the mainline entries around it. Set in Ivalice, it follows Vaughn and a crew of sky pirates and exiled royalty caught up in a war between empires. But the real draw is the Gambit system, programmable AI logic for your party that turns combat into something closer to setting up automation than mashing attack over and over. Once it clicks, you're tuning conditions and priorities instead of babysitting menus every single fight. The job system from Zodiac Age adds real build variety too, so two playthroughs can look completely different from each other. World is huge, exploration heavy, pacing slower and more political than most mainline entries. It's not flashy, but the systems underneath are some of the deepest the series has done, and Switch handles it fine for a game this size. NieR Automata, the end of YoRHa edition. Yoko Taro's post-apocalyptic story about androids 2B, 9S, and A2 fighting machine lifeforms on an abandoned Earth. Except it's really about consciousness, purpose, and what happens when the war outlives its original reason. Multiple playthroughs are required to actually see the full story, and each pass changes perspective and sometimes genre entirely, shifting between hack and slash, bullet hell sections, and text adventure segments. Combat from Platinum Games is fast and satisfying on its own, even without the narrative weight sitting behind it. The Switch port compresses a game that was demanding on other hardware, so visuals take a noticeable hit, but it runs, and it's fully portable, which matters a lot for a game people tend to replay. Recent firmware updates have also improved its Switch 2 compatibility and stability.
I'm transmitting your console.
Program.
Triangle Strategy, Tactics RPG from the Octopath team. Same HD 2D style, but the real hook is the Convictions system, where your choices during story scenes actually shift party opinion and change which path the narrative takes going forward. It's a war story about three nations fighting over salt and iron, told through a council mechanic where you vote alongside your companions instead of the game just deciding outcomes for you automatically. Battles are grid-based. Height and positioning matter a lot, and the difficulty can spike hard if you're not managing unit placement carefully. Story is dense, lots of reading, lots of political maneuvering between factions, closer to Tactics Royale than a typical JRPG plot structure. If you liked Fire Emblem strategy but wanted heavier narrative stakes tied directly to your decisions, this fits that gap well.
To ashes.
Final Fantasy Tactics, the Ivalice Chronicles. This is the 1997 Tactics classic, rebuilt for modern hardware, and it's the first time the original Tactics has landed on a Nintendo console at all. Story follows Ramza Bjolv and his childhood friend Delita during a civil war that spirals into something much bigger, involving Zodiac stones and hidden agendas across the continent. The remaster redid the script from scratch, added full voice acting, and folded in lore that was previously Japan only, tying it closer to 12 and Vagrant story than before. Combat is the same job-based grid tactics that influenced the entire genre afterward, now with a tactical view option and adjustable battle speed to cut down on repetitive fights. Two versions ship together, enhanced and classic, so purists and newcomers both get exactly what they want out of it.
The next move is key.
Sea of Stars, pixel art turn-based RPG built by Sabotage Studio,
clearly inspired by Chrono Trigger, but with its own identity once you're a few hours into it. Combat uses timed hits for both attacks and blocks, plus a combo system between your two leads that rewards paying attention instead of auto-battling through every fight you run into. Story starts simple, kids fighting an alchemist monsters, and grows into something with more weight the further you go, without ever overstaying its welcome along the way. Exploration has light platforming and puzzle elements woven directly into the world, instead of separate dungeons bolted on afterward. It's a shorter game by JRPG standards, doesn't pad itself out, and that restraint is honestly part of why it works so well. Great pick-up and play title for Switch, given how tight each session feels. Final Fantasy X/10-2 HD Remaster. 2 games in one package here. 10 follows Tidus, pulled into a world called Spira, and swept up in Yuna's pilgrimage to defeat Sin. A story about faith, sacrifice, and breaking cycles that people accept as unavoidable tradition. The sphere grid handles character growth, letting you shape stats and abilities across a branching board instead of relying on fixed levels. 10-2 is a tonal U-turn, lighter, faster-paced, built around a job-based dress sphere system that lets you swap combat roles mid-fight on the fly. It's a different game wearing the same character models, and it splits opinion because of that shift in tone. Together, they're one of the more complete packages in the genre. 2 very different structures worth playing back-to-back on one cartridge. Unicorn Overlord. Vanillaware's tactics RPG, hand-drawn art as always, but the structure is closer to a real-time strategy layer sitting on top of unit management. You're rebuilding a rebellion against an empire, recruiting units into squads with their own formations and passive synergies, then releasing them onto a map where battles resolve semi-automatically based on how you built each group beforehand. It sounds hands-off, but the depth is really in the prep work, positioning within squads, class synergies, and liberation mechanics that reward exploring rather than rushing straight through the main path. Story is fairly standard fantasy rebellion stuff, doesn't try to be the main draw here at all. The systems are the reason to play this one, and there's a lot of them once you're a few chapters deep into it.
Go.
Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition. The one that started Monolith Soft's run on Switch, remastered from the original Wii release. Shulk wields the Monado, a sword that shows visions of the future, on a world literally built from the bodies of 2 dead titans. Combat is real-time, with positional attacks and combo chains called arts, party members trading roles between tank, attacker, and healer, depending on how you build formation. Scale is the standout part here. Zones are massive, vertical, and dense, with side content that doesn't feel like filler most of the time you spend in it. This edition adds the future-connected epilogue, closing out a plot thread the original left open for years afterward. If you're getting into Xenoblade for the first time, this is still the correct place to start. Live Alive. Originally a Super Famicom game that never left Japan until this remake, and it's built differently than most JRPGs. 7 separate short stories across different eras, a caveman era, feudal Japan, the Wild West, a distant future, each with its own protagonist and gameplay quirks, before they all eventually connect together. HD 2D visuals suit the shifting tone well, and because each chapter is short, you get variety without the usual JRPG runtime bloat weighing things down. Combat is grid-based, with attack ranges tied to specific tiles instead of generic front row, back row logic most games use. Some chapters lean puzzle, some lean pure action. One is almost entirely without dialogue at all. It's a strange structure that mostly works because no single story overstays its welcome before the next one starts. Pokémon Legends Arceus. The series stepping away from its usual format here. Open zones instead of linear routes, and catching Pokémon now involves throwing balls directly in the field. Sneaking up, dodging attacks, no forced battle first every single encounter. Story is set in Old Hisui, before the Sinnoh region existed, following the first Pokédex being compiled, which reframes the entire catching mechanic as research rather than a simple checklist to complete. Battle's still turn-based, but reworked around move speed and an agile versus strong style choice made each turn. It's rough around the edges technically. Performance and visuals aren't the strongest showing on Switch, but the structural changes it introduced clearly influenced where the mainline series went next, making it worth playing for that reason alone. Dragon Quest XI's Echoes of an Elusive Age. The Switch version adds 2D mode, letting you swap between full 3D and a retro top-down style at will, which is a genuinely nice touch for a series built on nostalgia in the first place. Story follows the Luminary, a hero fighting a reputation as a supposed harbinger of destruction, while chasing down actual answers about his role in the world around him. Combat is classic turn-based menus, no reinvention here, and that's deliberate. This is Dragon Quest doing what Dragon Quest does with clean execution instead of chasing new ideas. Pacing is generous, side content is plentiful, and the game respects genre traditions instead of trying to subvert them for the sake of it. If you want a JRPG that isn't trying to prove anything, this is one of the best executions of that idea around.
Fight, and fight some more!
Fire Emblem, Three Houses. Tactics RPG wrapped around a school sim structure. You're a professor at Garreg Mach, picking one of 3 houses to teach, and that choice reshapes the entire back half of the story once the time skip hits and a war breaks out between former classmates. Combat is grid-based permadeath tactics, classic Fire Emblem at its core, but the monastery sections let you build relationships, train stats outside of battle, and recruit students from other houses if you manage the schedule right. 3 main routes plus a 4th unlockable path mean the same setup plays out completely differently depending on who you side with in the end. It's a long game, heavy on management between battles, but the political weight of the story is genuinely some of the series' best writing to date. Persona 5 Royal. The definitive version of Persona 5. A school life sim fused with turn-based dungeon crawling through palaces, twisted reflections of corrupt adults' hearts that your Phantom Thieves crew infiltrates to steal their distorted desires away. Combat uses elemental weaknesses and a baton pass system that rewards exploiting them efficiently instead of grinding through fights the slow way. Royal adds a new semester, a new confidant, reworked dungeons, and a new social stat, on top of already sharp UI and soundtrack work that most RPGs don't come close to matching. Balancing school life, part-time jobs, and confidant relationships against dungeon deadlines is really the game underneath the combat itself. Long, stylish, and the Switch version handles it without any real compromise worth mentioning.
Go down!
Xenoblade Chronicles 3. Monolith Soft combining the mechanical identity of the first 2 entries into something more refined overall. 6 protagonists from 2 warring nations who fuse into Ouroboros forms mid-battle once trust between them builds naturally. Story deals directly with mortality. Characters here have a fixed lifespan by design, which gives the usual JRPG stakes actual weight instead of vague world-ending threats floating in the background. Combat keeps the real-time arts and role system, but streamlines party management compared to the first 2 games. Easier to parse without losing any real depth. World design is the strongest in the series. Seamless zones, no loading between areas, dense with content that rewards wandering off the main path constantly. Best entry point if you want the full scale of what Xenoblade actually does. That's the full list. Let me know in the comments what you'd swap out, what got left off, and which one you're starting first. If this was useful, a like helps more than you'd think. See you in the next one.